Welcome, everyone, to episode 77 of the RDH Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Chad. Joined alongside me, virtually, of course, is my brother Tanner. How's it hanging, dude?
It was a good weekend because I got some picks right, but mostly because I bring to you the Buckeye of Ohio State. He's right here. If you can see on YouTube, if you can't, you're missing out. I'm gonna be honest because this little dude looks amazing. Just a nut right in my hand, a national
You're
championship nut at that.
just, I, I can't even,
I'm just gonna kind
you
of
know,
sit here for the rest of the video. Just gonna
what
hang out.
is Brutus give you,
Mm-hmm.
little Brutus? Gotcha. Yeah, okay. Well, right,
Baby
just,
Brutus, baby national championship Brutus, the nut of national champions.
oh, that's, I could go a lot of ways with that one. Well, like I said, RDH Sports, we're going to hit a ton of football today, and we're going to talk about the national championship. And if you can't tell, Tanner's a big Buckeye fan. I'm gonna look in that little damn Buckeye's eyes the rest of the podcast. I can't not see it now. Anyway, it's snowing in freaking Florida. It's snowing in Texas. It's snowing in Louisiana. We always talk about the weather. Just what's going on? You know what I mean? It's probably because the Cowboys aren't in the playoffs, right? It's got to be what it is. No, it's not. They're garbage. All right, we're gonna start with and yes, we are massive Cowboys fans too, by the way. So it's gonna be fun today. I'm telling you right now, I haven't gone on a lot of rants, but I'm in a ranting mood today. So this is gonna be a good one when we talk about the coaches. If you're not watching us on YouTube, if you're listening to us on Spotify or on Apple, Spreaker, we got divisional round recap, we got conference championship, we got coaching rumors, like I said. We got the national championship recap. Tanner's going to jump in on that one, potentially do a lap around the pool. Who knows? He's stoked for the national championship Buckeyes. And then we got a prospect profile with a wide receiver out of Arizona that I cannot wait to go for and butcher his name because it's the first time I'm going to butcher a name for the season. All right, divisional recap round, NFL. Man, Texans always get the first game. They're always going to be the ones that play at the first, and they just Mahomes rolled up his sleeves. Hold on. Let me get this. Let me get the job done. Chiefs. I'm not going to lie to you. Didn't look as strong as I thought they would, but they did everything that they needed to win that game. And the terrifying part is like, have you ever seen Chris Jones, the defensive tackle for them, this well rested into the playoffs? Because like he seemingly is in the backfield more than he's ever been, and I'm like, how is that possible? You know what I mean? Like a lot of people don't talk about the fact that Chris Jones, their defensive tackle, is probably the best defensive tackle in the league now that Aaron Donald is retired.
He's
You know
probably
what I mean?
one of the best defensive players, just, obviously in general, since Aaron
Good call.
Donald has retired. I mean, he's been fantastic, kind of like you said. And I think he should be up there, in terms of awards and things like that. Will he get it? Probably not. But he just does this every single year. And it's almost like he keeps getting better as he gets older, which is not a thing you see very often in the NFL, especially at a position like that, which is, it's a physical position, very, very physically demanding. And he just continues to push people over while he's, getting older. And it's like, that is like, how do you do that?
Well, exactly, and you alluded to it with the physicalness of the position. Like the most physical positions in the NFL are offensive line and defensive line because like you're engaging every single play. You know what I mean? And it's like that dude is just gets. I mean, think about being as big as he is as a defensive tackle. Like think about how many times you're single covered. Probably like what maybe 10% of the time, like maybe. You know what I mean? He never doesn't have two sets of hands on him. So it's just the guy's playing lights out, man. But what did you see, from that Chiefs team, and what do you need to see going into this weekend against a massive my Super Bowl Buffalo Bills? What do we got? Chiefs.
I mean, starting on like, what did I see with the Texans? It's just, they
Yeah.
didn't play a bad game. Chiefs looked a little slow, to start out, but, first round bye, that's usually very common, with those buys. They come out starting slow, and Mahomes, he's at home. He knows the Texans just didn't put up a whole lot of a fight. You saw there in the middle of the game, it got pretty close, but Mahomes just started to pull away once he actually started scoring touchdowns. When they were able to convert, when they were able to go down the field and execute, that's when it showed. That's when it showed like the difference of those two teams. And I'm not saying that Houston's a bad team by any stretch of the means. I'm just saying that Kansas City is. I have 14 wins this year, I think. 15, I think, actually. And there's a number one seed. 16? Really? Dang.
No, 15.
Okay.
15.
Yeah, because they lost one to Denver and one to Buffalo. But it showed, the difference in those teams too showed. And it's the championship pedigree of Patrick Mahomes just kind of showed up. And I think everyone was expecting it. It was just a matter of when was it going to happen. And here it is. This is the Mahomes we've been waiting to see all season. And it's no surprise, I don't think in really anyone's eyes, that he kind of showed up and showed out for the playoffs. I mean, Travis Kelce getting involved in that entire game, very predictable, very much like, okay, yeah, this is pretty much how every single playoff run we've had goes, and it's continuing to do the same. It was, I think about the AFC opponents that they kind of just clown on in that first round. You look back and it's like Jacksonville the past couple years when they had that big beat over the Chargers. They went into KC, kind of same result. You know what I mean? So it's just who's gonna get eliminated by KC this time is the narrative that we just continue to go with. But against Buffalo, man, this is the matchup that we've been waiting to see pretty much all year, in my opinion. This is the game that I wanted to see, and this is the game that I want to see every single season. Brady and Manning. This is it right here. This is going to be our, primetime spot for the next however many years. It's going to be Josh Allen. It's going to be I almost said Joe Burrow. He's going to be there too. Patrick Mahomes, obviously. I cannot forget him. But it's going to be fun. It's going to be fireworks. And Josh has a bad taste in his mouth from a lot of those times that they've played in the past, man. And so this is the best he's ever played. This is not the best that Mahomes has ever looked, and it's going to be kind of which guy can go and play the best on the day, I really think. But it's going to be interesting because Casey's got home field advantage. They're going to have that stadium rocking. They're very used to that environment. They're going to get loud. It's going to be Arrowhead in full force, and Josh Allen's going to have to go into, a gauntlet, really, in just that single game. I mean, a gauntlet over 2 games, you could say it with the Ravens. I mean, that game was fantastic. He played out of his mind, and he's going to have to repeat, if not be even better than he was this past weekend if he wants to beat Mahomes, because he never has in the playoffs.
And Mahomes has only lost to, Brady and Joe Burrow in the playoffs. That's it. He hasn't lost to anybody else. And, this could be the year that Josh Allen does it. And, it's also a year that the Bills have been, hit on every single cylinder in terms of production on the offensive side of the ball. And really the defense has been stepping up these last couple of weeks of the season as well, which is what you love to see and what you have to see, when you're playing a team like Baltimore. I mean, you held Baltimore to under 30 points, right? You held Baltimore to under 28 points. So it's like, that's not bad, but 27 points is what the Bills put up against Baltimore. And it's just, we'll get to that game. To finish with the Texans and the Chiefs, for me, the Texans, like, this is where I see them going out almost every single year. Unfortunately, CJ Stroud, took a step back from last year, but at the same time, he's the best quarterback in that division. And I think he's the best quarterback of kind of that, I'm not going to say lower tier, because that sounds a bit disrespectful, but I don't think he's on the level of, a Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes. Yeah, there's levels, right? There's
rising
levels to the
star.
game. And
he's rising.
Rising star. Exactly. He's getting up there. But I don't see the Texans competing after this round, you know what I mean, for the foreseeable future. You nailed it. You have Mahomes and insert 3 other teams. Like it's just that simple. You have Burrow, you have Allen, and you have Lamar Jackson. Like, I don't know any other teams that are going to make it. Sure, maybe the Chargers get in. Sure, maybe, the Jets have a heck of a draft with the coaching that we're going to talk about in a couple segments. But you nailed it on the head. The Chiefs are the team that you got to beat, and Texans didn't beat them, and they only put up 14 points in the playoffs, and that didn't go too well. The surprise of the week, in my opinion, you had the Commanders 45 points against the Lions 31 points. That was a game that I didn't see coming. I picked Detroit. You picked Detroit. Pretty much everybody picked Detroit. And from the beginning of that game, it was pretty apparent that Detroit was not going to run away with it. And when you have a team that has nothing to lose playing with house money, it can go one of 2 ways. It can go Denver Broncos in the first round, or it can go, this way. It can go this way with the Commanders. Nobody expected Jaden Daniels to have as many playoff wins as Dak Prescott has his entire career in his rookie season, but he does, right? And this division in the NFC East is only getting better. Not to mention who they're going to play, in the next round, in the conference championship round. But the Commanders, man, you can't say enough good things about them. Unbelievable that this team. It's not even that they got hot. It's just they're a good coach team. Dallas, unfortunately, lets the best head coaching candidate walk, obviously. And, DQ's over there doing his thing. And on the other side, Detroit, that's a bad taste in your mouth, right? After the game came out, it said they had 16 players, like defensive players on injured reserve or something crazy like that. Like I said, it's kind of how the roster held up, but at no point in that game did Detroit look like they had it. I mean, what impressed you most about that Washington Commanders team?
I think just Jaden being so poised, what's the word? Like very, calm and collected under the excruciating amount of pressure that has in that game, that he has in that game. You go into Detroit, which has been not a fun place to play this season, and you come out of there with 45 points on the board against the number 1 seed in the NFC, and that's just probably the biggest upset I've seen in a while, really, in terms of the NFL landscape. But how impressive is it that Jaden Daniels looked not only, he didn't look any different than how he's looked these past however many weeks, 5, 6, 7 weeks. How impressive is it that he looked even better and even more accurate than he has been all season in this single game? I mean, there were reads in there that I was like, I was like, this guy is awesome.
I know.
Combine
that one down the field. Remember that 40-yard over the shoulder dot on the 10-yard line? It was like, Jaden. Jaden. That was filthy.
He's going to be in this league for a long, long time, and he's going to be making plays like that and competing for Super Bowls for a long, long time, because that is just the type of player that he is. The type of skill set that he brings to the game is extremely unique. Obviously, Lamar Jackson is the obvious comparison, but it looks like he's even better than Lamar was when he started out. You look at it and you're like, Lamar had some issues throwing the ball, down the field, some accuracy issues, but like we just said, it doesn't look like Jaden's kind of struggling with that as much as Lamar did early in his career. And he looks fantastic. So he has an excellent role model with Lamar, kind of who he can kind of model his game after and then create a little bit of his own, version of it. Because I just love the way that he clicked with this offense. I love the way that they get the ball out quick, utilize Jaden's legs, but don't utilize it too much. You know what I mean? Because you don't want your quarterback to be the guy that's going to, obviously get all the rushing yards for your team. You want to have a balanced attack, something that's going to make the defense guess. And I think that's what Washington is doing. I think Cliff Kingsbury was kind of written off as an offensive coordinator, as an offensive guy in the NFL, just in general. They're like, you can't do it at this level. And I think he turned around and said, yes, I can. And I'm going to put a college offense in the NFL, and we're going to make it to the NFC Championship game. So all the doubters, everything like that for Washington, they look fantastic. Jaden Daniels is playing at an unprecedented level, and it looks like he's clearly the offensive rookie of the year. And I didn't think that you could look a whole lot better than CJ did last year, but I think he's already doing it. And these kids that are just coming into the NFL, it's just like they just keep getting more ready every single year. The guys alone in this class have looked fantastic. And even Caleb, he's still got some time, and we'll get into the NFL coaching in a little bit because there's the arrow's pointing up on him too. It's like, what? So these guys are insane. Jaden Daniels is the cream of the crop. It looks like the second overall pick is the pick you want to sit at. You don't want to be number 1. You want to be number 2 because it'll force you into a good quarterback for some reason. But yeah, man, he's been electric. I haven't even talked about the Detroit Lions. They looked good. Their offense looked good, but it just wasn't
to hit on your point real quick before you go on the Lions and you talk about these quarterbacks and all these guys coming in. I mean, specifically guys coming out of LSU. True. Like you have Joe Burrow that came in, took the league by storm, then injury. But then you had Jaden Daniels from LSU as well. It's like all these guys are coming in, and the quarterback position, you don't see the success that early on. You see what happened with Mahomes, where he sat for an entire year. Jordan Love, who sat for years and is kind of going up and down right now, right? But so much success with the quarterback position. This year, I think it'll be a bit different in terms of the draft, in my opinion. And the reason I wanted to say it is because I think that this draft class is a lot weaker in terms of quarterback than it was, last year. Last year, you had the top two players were quarterbacks. This year, I don't even know if my quarterbacks right now are in my top 20, right? And that's with Shedeur and that's with Cam Ward. I mean, that's, NFL GMs have been rising on Ole Miss Jackson Dart as well. We'll get into all that talk in the offseason more, in a couple games, believe it or not. But keep going with the Detroit Lions and in a team that, I thought was going to be honestly in the Super Bowl. Like I really thought that the Lions were a shoo-in for the Super Bowl this year, but they weren't. Take me through what the hell went wrong with them? Other than the Goffense may have run into a quite literal brick wall.
The Goffense, and this is what I was afraid of, kind of. I mentioned it a little bit, you know what I mean, in the regular season, but an offense that is, they're very aggressive. Obviously, we know that, but it was a lot of Jared's mistakes, a lot of mistakes, turnovers, things like that just kind of put the Commanders in a position to score when they weren't really failing to score. It's one thing when you're going back and forth and kind of like a defensive battle, turnovers on both sides, but when one offense is clearly clicking and can clearly get the ball down the field and can score points pretty much on any single possession, it's going to be really hard if you turn the ball over multiple times, if that turnover battle does not go your way, because that's going to turn into 10, 14, maybe even 21 points on potentially 3 turnovers. That's not even that many. It's a lot in the NFL, but it's 3 chances that there are 3 opportunities that the other team has to go down and get points. So they utilize it. They made the most of it. And if Detroit doesn't make those turnovers, I'm not going to say, it's going to be a different game. They put up like 30-something points, but, in a game that you cannot make mistakes, they made too many mistakes. And that's not the Detroit offense we're really used to seeing. So I think one with the time off that they had was very beneficial. But sometimes it just kind of derails teams a little bit, gets them starting slow, especially with Washington coming off a big win against Tampa Bay at the very end of the game. That's just like put the chip on their shoulder. Hey, we can do this. We just want a playoff game going into Detroit. So they felt really, really good about that. And they just kind of continued that success. Jaden has all year, so he's a guy that can get points out of pretty much any drive. That was kind of the stat that I think you gave me, or someone had given me the past recent couple of weeks. He doesn't punt. Jaden doesn't like to punt, and he gets his guys down the field. So I don't know, man. With him going to LSU, like you said, you see a bunch of these guys that are just NFL ready, like we were talking about, and I think it's because they play a whole lot in college. The NFL is kind of turning into this, it's rather, experience, quantity over quality of the tape is kind of where I think a lot of guys are starting to lean, because Jaden Daniels, look how many games he played in college. He had the injuries and things of that nature, but he had many, many years where he was developing, he's getting better. Same with Bo Nix. You go over there and look at him.
And the players are getting paid millions, so that'll keep you there a little bit too.
True. I mean, you could say it happened in the middle of these guys' college careers, and I think it's going to keep a lot of guys more in the college scene longer. To your point,
why would you not?
That's pretty much it. Lions are not the wagon we thought they were, and Commanders are pretty good.
We'll see, what happens next year. I think that the Lions are going to be a team that's always going to be competing for the number 1 spot. That team isn't going to go away. I'm going to ask you an interesting question coming up, though. So I'll leave that little nugget there about the Lions' future. Moving on to the Sunday games, only got a couple left. Then we're on to the conference championship round. Rams and Eagles, that game was close, 22-28. If the Rams just had a little bit more, and by a little bit more, I mean a little bit more offensive line, they would have won that game. But I love watching defensive linemen, specifically defensive tackles, specifically Jordan Davis, just run people over. I mean, the progression that this guy's done from year 1 and year 2 is absurd. Like, the fact that he's already in the top 5 defensive tackles in the league, and you saw it. You saw it during that game. If Jordan Davis wasn't playing for the Eagles that game, I don't know how much penetration that defensive line gets because seemingly every time he was leading that attack with the penetration. Early in the game, he started getting sacks. And it's like, the defensive tackle's starting to get sacks. You nailed it right before we talked about it. Don't let Saquon get going. Well, Saquon broke like a 50-yarder. You know what I mean? And they really didn't even utilize Saquon that much. They didn't even really utilize the offense that much because it was just, the Rams had long drives, but the Eagles, man, that's another team that's going to be there every single year. And with this offense specifically, they have so many weapons on that offensive side. And then you go look at the defensive side, and the defense is playing the best in the NFC the last couple weeks of the season. So it's just like this team's hitting on all cylinders. And if you're an Eagles fan, you're stoked. You may be anti-greasing up the flagpoles, getting ready. You know what I mean? Philly goes hard with those sellies. But the Rams, man, I mean, it was a game that they could have won. It's just when you watch those games in the playoffs, you're just like, ugh. With a couple more stops, they could have won it. But when you look at the sack numbers, you look at the time that Matthew Stafford didn't have, you look at, I'll say it, the drops from big name players on the Rams,
100%.
right? Like big name players on the Rams on third down really hurt you.
I will say too, I mean, we'll just continue because I think this is
I was about to say,
bleed into my point.
Last point. Matthew Stafford proved that he's not done.
True.
I'm just going to say that. He proved that he's not done. His time is definitely not up yet. I think he's absolutely going to run it back with that team, and I think that team has, depending upon the San Francisco 49ers, has a good chance to repeat that division. But again, we don't know what's going to happen with San Francisco. But the Rams, man, Patty Pafford, you can't even be mad at him because on key situations, the ball was in the hands, and it just, didn't get picked up. What do you got on the Rams, man, and the Eagles?
It was in the hands, except for on that fourth down at the very end of the game where he just threw it out of bounds. But
that was bad.
Anyways,
that was bad throw.
I think what I wanted to say is I think this is a very different football game if we don't have that weather like in the middle of the game. Because in my opinion, that's kind of where that Kyren turnover came from. I think that Stafford fumble as well, where he just kind of like the ball just like guy hit his arm and the ball just fell out of his hands. I mean, when was the last time you saw Stafford just lose the ball like that? So I think a lot of those key third down drops were because the ball's wet, because the ball's slick, because these guys are from, unfortunately, LA and their whole state's on fire right now. So it's a little, I think if you're a Rams fan, it's a little, it's like, okay, well, there was a whole lot of opportunity and they almost actually won it despite all of those errors too. So this is going to be interesting, especially if the Philadelphia Eagles don't clean up their offense a little bit next week, because we've seen that Washington can go down. They can score points pretty much on anyone. The biggest games that they have struggled with this season have been the Eagles, though. So it's going to be interesting with the Eagles with home field advantage in this matchup. But you look back at that Rams game and you almost kind of wonder what went wrong for the Eagles. Why is this offense not as good as it, should be? Because you have a 2,000-yard rusher with Saquon Barkley. Give him the ball more. He had like 26 rushes, which is fantastic, and he ripped a couple too. And that's the reason that they won the game, is because they gave the ball to Saquon Barkley in those key situations. And Kellen Moore started finally figuring it out. He's like, oh, maybe we should run this thing. It's snowing, so I love it. I love the play calling towards the end because they were like, all right, Saquon, figure it out. And that's what you do in the playoffs. That's what you do. You don't go down the field and you don't, obviously turn the ball over. It's very easier said than done, but you give your stars the rock, and your star is Saquon Barkley in that offensive line, and they're going to block for you in the trenches. And I will say, though, give a whole lot of credit to LA's defense because they were making life very difficult for Jalen Hurts. They were that's one of the biggest challenges I think we've seen this Philadelphia Eagles offensive line face pretty much all year. And the Rams, hats off to Jared Verse. He played a fantastic game. He was in there pretty much every single time. Young guy, just making these massive plays. So I think we're going to continue to see him for the foreseeable future, and probably is going to be your defensive rookie of the year. I think he's a rookie, right? And he's going to continue to probably be in award voting for the next however many years. So the Rams, they got themselves a young defense, but it's good. And I think that if you're a Rams fan, you hang your hat on this. You don't know how many years Stafford has left, like you said, but he's not done. He's going to take at least 1 or 2 more runs at this thing, and see if he can get it done, because he's clearly delivering these fantastic passes in the worst conditions. So if you're a Rams fan, it makes you kind of wonder what would have happened if you didn't have that weather. But hey, that's why you get the first round. That's why you get home field advantage. That's why you play in Philadelphia. You know what I mean? Like, that's why that's an advantage in a state like that. The playoffs run through the North. They always have. And you got to play in the weather to win the big one, to win the big games. So you look and see however many teams have done that this season, and they've been very successful, those northern teams, in a lot of these playoffs. And it's just what they do. It's how they work. So I like it a lot, man. We'll see what this NFC Championship game is going to get up to, but I'll say Philly doesn't get rolling quick. Washington might. And if Washington makes a Super Bowl with a rookie quarterback, all hell's breaking loose. All hell's breaking loose.
Yeah, because it literally does not happen ever. And rookie quarterbacks typically never win in their rookie season.
They've never won
in the playoffs. Yeah, never won a Super Bowl. So that's in itself. We'll see, though. The Eagles are a buzzsaw. I think they split this season. If not, the Eagles winning.
I thought the Eagles won too.
I think the Eagles might have won too. I think that game came down to a field goal, if I'm not mistaken. But it's a divisional matchup. That game is a complete toss up. We'll hit it in the next segment. But the last one is just the disappointment with the Ravens, against the Bills. The Bills, I mean, they were kind of the same as, the Chiefs, the same as the Eagles. They just did enough. They didn't really hit on all cylinders, but they did enough. James Cook got cooking. Josh Allen, when he needed to make plays, he made plays. And the Ravens had some key turnovers. It's just that simple. The first half, Lamar Jackson was pretty different than the second half, Lamar Jackson. The first half, it was like, ooh, all right, we need to wake up a little bit. And then the second half, it was like, there he is. You know what I mean? Like, there it is. But you got set back in the first half. You can't, when you get set back like that, with the fumble, with just the turnovers that happened, and not to mention the biggest fumble and or drop ball of the entire weekend. I mean, the sure hand Mark Andrews, you feel bad for the guy, but Buffalo was going to win that game anyway. Yeah. It was 1 minute and 38 seconds left on the clock. Josh Allen, you're telling me Josh Allen wasn't going to go down?
Tyler Bass
with 1 minute 38 seconds
too.
Yeah, it's that game was over. Buffalo would have won that game 27-30, even if Baltimore gets that conversion, in my opinion. But they didn't need to, and they kind of walked it off there. And unfortunately, football came to an end this weekend because of that. But the Ravens, man, they're so close. They are literally a turnover away, and potentially, not having the ball at the end of the game away from winning that game. Like that game, we said it before it started, was a complete toss-up. Whoever had it at the end was going to win. You called it. Josh Allen had it at the end, and he won the game. So that's really everything we got on the divisional round. We're going to jump to the conference championship round, but before we jump to the conference championship round, I have to give you your chance to let everybody know what you saw with the Ravens. And hey, you called it right this weekend. And I got a little, taken away, a little carried away, as they say, and picked Baltimore like an idiot. But
I don't think that's an idiot.
That roster, man. How do you go against them? 1 point. You know what I mean?
You look at the game that they had earlier in the season, the Ravens and the Bills, and Ravens won it 35-10. And how did they do it? Derrick Henry, man. Put it on the ground. Let him run. I think they could have gone to a Derrick Henry a little bit more in this game. I think you see good teams, obviously utilizing their playbook to the full extent in the playoffs. That's kind of, you wait all season to pull out these plays. You wait all season to show what you're made of. But I just wanted to see a little bit more Derrick Henry. I get they have weapons. Rashad Bateman had a great game. He's really come on as a really, really good receiver this season.
Wonder what that contract's going to be like.
I know, and they finally got one. They got a receiver. His name's Rashad Bateman. He's chilling. So again, with Mark Andrews, got to catch that ball. But I do agree with you on your point that I think Buffalo would have won that game. And I think another thing too is the turnovers, man. The turnovers. How many times have we been in the playoffs and have just said that if Lamar doesn't turn that over, or if there's not a turnover on that play, if Zay Flowers doesn't fumble the ball, you know what I mean? if L'Jarius Sneed doesn't pop that thing out. How many times has this happened for the Ravens? And it's not always because of Lamar. He had a couple turnovers in this game that I think you can blame on him. That interception and that big pass, and then that
And the
fumble.
fumble.
Exactly. And the big Mark Andrews dropped. And that is the three kind of the biggest moments in that game for me. And they all came at the error and the lack of execution from Baltimore. And that's just not a thing that you've seen this team do pretty much all season long. And I thought that their defense played good. They played well. But it's hard to stop Josh Allen. You held him to, what did you say, like 27? So that's pretty good, all things considered. I think you can still win that game. You would have liked to have seen like a less of a, one less touchdown on the board. But just all in all, man, it seems like Lamar's going to have to play a perfect game if he wants to win in the playoffs. And that's just, I don't know why, you know what I mean? I don't know why it keeps coming down to, it's like, okay, it's going to do this, it's going to do that. But one turnover is going to decide the game and Lamar's just going to lose this again. So I think both teams deserve to be in the AFC Championship game, but I want the ball. Give the ball to Derrick Henry. Let it ride in the playoffs, man. Because I think that Bill's defense did a really good job at stopping Derrick Henry in that game. They really, that defense was stout, man. They were getting pressured, not letting him break free, but a couple times he did. And that's the thing about Derrick is he gets better as the game goes on. He gets continuously better. You saw with Saquon, it wasn't working, but gave Saquon the ball, 70-yard rush, boom, touchdown. You know what I mean? Changed the game. Absolutely changed the game. And then he did it again. I get it. It's Saquon Barkley. It's not Derrick Henry. They got different motors at this time, this period in time. But you ride your running backs in the playoffs, man. I just wanted to see him get, a little bit more, couple more chances. I think you and I said coming into this weekend and obviously the previous weekend that both these running backs should get 25 carries a game minimum. It doesn't matter if they have 30 yards or if they have 20 yards on 20 carries. Give it to them 5 more times. Just continuously get that run game going. It's going to open up a whole lot for you down the field. And with an offense like that, it doesn't really matter when you got Lamar Jackson, who can seemingly create nothing or something out of nothing. So I think he deserved to win that game. I thought that he came back in the second half and played probably the best that he had. He just had some balls in there that were just like, oh man, that's awesome. Some plays where he was just like, it looked like he wasn't even scrambling. Like he just, how that meme where it's like Jameis Winston, like he's sitting in the back of the pocket and then he just like steps up in the pocket like 7 different times, but then he's like at the first down marker and it looks like he's going to throw downfield, but he's just sitting in the pocket while rushing for a 10-yard rush. That's what Lamar looks like every single time. Like he's just upright. He's just moving around. He just like slowly, or he'll just like quickly like go and kind of just like maneuver up and, oh, boom, he's at the 5. Oh, boom. Oh, now he made a man miss. Boom, he's at the 10. It's like, oh, cool. So that's kind of what I just saw pretty much all game. And they couldn't stop him. And it really stinks that they just had those turnovers. So a lot of that was self-inflicted wounds, but I mean, what are you going to do? You know what I mean? You have to play you have to play Joe Burrow, you have to play Josh Allen, and you have to play Mahomes. Pretty much one of those guys is gatekeeping the Super Bowl, and you're probably going to have to beat 2 of them if you want to make it to the Super Bowl. So I don't really know what else you want Lamar to do. He had the best season he's ever had. And like,
I think you can't ask. I think we both kind of nailed it, right? Like it's a couple of those turnovers, and unfortunately in the playoffs you can't have those because guess who didn't have those?
Josh.
Buffalo.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's how you win.
They leaned on their running game early. Or Buffalo did. They got James Cook involved very, very early on, and he was good. He's been fantastic these entire playoffs, even that Denver game too. So I don't know, man. It seemed like an unbeatable roster with an unbeatable formula, but it just going away from the formula a little bit. I mean, kind of makes sense. You know what I mean? So Buffalo continued to do what they do, and it looked easy at a point.
Yeah, which is insane to think when you go back and look at that roster that the Ravens actually had. Conference championship round, we got the Eagles versus the Commanders, Bills versus Chiefs. Eagles versus Commanders up first. Right now, Philly is favored at 6.5. You got to run through Philly, but Washington's used to Philly. This is one that's interesting to me because, again, it's a divisional team. So that's where you got to start, right? Like you've got 2 divisional opponents going at it. That's big. Second, you've got Jaden playing in a level right now that I don't know that the Philadelphia Eagles have seen. Right? Like, we talk about this where it's like you have guys in the regular season that kind of hit a level, and then that level kind of just flattens out, right? Well, you have guys that have other gears as well in the playoffs, like Mahomes. Like if Josh gets past it and makes it to the Super Bowl, you can argue the Josh because and even the games he's lost to Mahomes, you're like, he put up how many yards? You know what I mean? So yeah, so Jaden's playing like that right now. It's like he's doing what? Like he beat who? Who did he beat? Right? But is Washington going to be able to stop the formula of Philly? Right? Like that's the big thing. If Washington bottles up Saquon, we'll say Washington completely bottles up Saquon. Okay. They didn't bottle up A.J. Brown or Devontae Smith.
Mm-hmm.
Dallas Goedert could get going, right? Like, Jaden right now is playing on house money, like I said earlier, and like you've alluded to. I don't know how he makes it farther, but at the same time, if I were to wake up on Monday and you tell me that Washington won by a field goal, I'd be like, okay. Like I'm not that shocked. If Mahomes doesn't make it to the Super Bowl, shocked. Yeah. That's the only thing that'll shock me the rest of the way. But this Philly team, there's holes. You can clearly see the holes in this Philly team in that offense. And it's just like you said it earlier. It's like, how do they have these holes? I don't understand these holes because you have so many different places you can go. Oh, Devontae Adams covered. Or Devontae Smith is covered. Let me throw it to A.J. Brown. Oh, A.J. Brown's covered. Let me throw it to Devontae Smith. Oh, they're both covered. Let me just throw it to, I don't know, Dallas Goedert. Right? Like, oh, Saquon's open in the flat. Let me just give it to Saquon real quick. Like, there's so many options that they can have, and I just can't pick against them at home. I don't see Washington going in and winning that game. But if they do, I'll be pretty happy because I will be going for Washington in this game over Philly. But the Eagles, man, how do you pick against these Eagles right now?
Yeah, I will be rooting for Washington. Hopefully they get a dub, but I just don't think they will. Like I said earlier, man, Washington has struggled against this Philadelphia team. I remember that game, where Washington, I think, was at home, and it just looked like they were flat, deflated, whatever you want to call it. It just, their offense really can't get going, and I think Philly does a really, really, really good job of pinning down Terry McLaurin, which is probably the biggest part of that offense. He got going in that Detroit game. You saw that massive run that he had off that little wide receiver screen, and he got going. And if you don't let Terry McLaurin get going, I don't know how well this offense plays for Washington, because he's a key part. He catches a touchdown like every single game, and when he doesn't do what he does, it's like, okay, now where else do we go? So I think Brian Robinson has been, in my opinion, a letdown, especially towards the end of the season. Austin Eckler's been all right, but it really has been Jaden Daniels to Terry McLaurin. And they can cover that up. I really think that this team gets a little bit more one-dimensional in Philadelphia with the stout defense that they have, and that defense that the level that they've been playing at recently is, I think it's going to be too much for Washington. So it's going to be tough. I'm not betting against Washington, or I'm not betting against Philly. So, give me Philly to make it to another Super Bowl in recent.
I'm going back.
Really?
I'm going back. Give me Washington, okay, dude. Give me Washington. And I'm sitting here thinking to myself, if your child's listening, tell them to put the ears on for a second. Washington just fucking beat Detroit, dude. They just fucking beat Detroit and made Detroit look like a JV team toward the end of that game.
Yeah, they did.
So I talked myself into it in my head. I'm going Washington. And confidence level, not high, right? Not high at all. Confidence level for next game, not high at all. But there's so many different ways that Philly can win this game. There's so many different ways. But how has Philly not won the game in the past? How have they not won?
Lack of execution.
Lack of execution. It's always shooting themselves in the foot. Mm-hmm. It's like never the roster, right? I don't know. Maybe Jaden just keeps it going, and maybe Jaden makes it to the Super Bowl, And I don't mean to be that guy, but on the AFC side, I'm pretty stoked because that Washington roster, it's like, hey, all right. You know what I mean? I thought we were going to be playing Detroit. Nah, I think we're going to be playing Philly. Nah, we're playing Washington. You know what I mean? Like that could be what it is. But at the same time, do you want to play Jaden right now? Nobody probably does.
Mhm.
You can argue that he's been the best quarterback these playoffs so far. Like you can argue just he's been the best. And if you look at the roster, man, like look at
I know.
nudge the guy next to you. Look at the roster, man. Like
so many new players, so many new systems, new schemes, everything.
It's the first year. It's the first year in this system. It's the very first year, and Jaden is going out here and doing what he's doing and is playing a divisional opponent in the conference championship round. I'm riding hot. Let's go Vegas. Let's go Washington.
Like that.
All right, Bills and Chiefs. 2 points is the spread right now. Like, well, last week was 1 point. This week is 2 points. You give KC a 2-point lead on the Bills here. Man, I don't know about this one. I don't know about this one. Mr. Josh is ready.
He's ready. But
he's ready.
Is it going to happen? Is it going
take
to
us away? Take us away. Is Tony Romo on CBS? He's CBS, right?
Yeah, he is. He's right there too. He's watching. He's right above the Buckeye.
All right, we got Tony for the night game then. Good. I want Tony calling this one. All right. Who do you got? Bills, Chiefs. Come on. Who do you got?
I'm going Chiefs. I can't pick against Mahomes.
Damn it.
I know, because you wanted the Chiefs. I know you did. Because I just can't. I can't pick. I've been thinking about it. I'm like, which teams am I going to go for here? Like, obviously, I'm going for the Bills. I want them to win. This is the furthest Josh Allen, I think, has ever made it in the playoffs, but it seems like it's the same game we've seen the past 3 years, you know? But this game is probably the most important of all those games because it's your ticket to the Super Bowl. And with the Super Bowl on the line, I've only seen Brady do it, and that was in overtime. And I've seen Joe Burrow do it. And that one looked, game control, time management at the end of the game. It's going to take, honestly, a Herculean effort for Josh. He's going to have to play the best he has played all season in this game. Period. If he wants to beat Mahomes at home. If this were in Buffalo, I think it'd be a different story. But KC's at home. They're the number 1 seed. The only team that they've really lost to has kind of been Buffalo this season. I don't really count the Denver loss because it was backups. And it was a Carson Wentz-led team. So they really only have like one significant loss in this season. And it's the guys on the other side. So how easy is it for them to have motivation for this game? So easy. I can't believe I'm saying this, but it looks like the Chiefs kind of have a chip on their shoulder. And I didn't even know that was possible after 2 Super Bowl victories. So I think they're headed for 3, man. I think this is going to be a Philly and KC rematch, and I think it's going to be the same result. So I can't pick against Mahomes, and that's just the way of life right now. You just can't pick
Washington in Buffalo Super Bowl. Everybody get your calendars.
I like it.
Get your popcorn ready.
Look, my popcorn will be very ready in a very massive tub if that is the Super Bowl. But I don't know, man.
Well, look, if you're a bettor,
I don't know.
If you're a bettor and you're still listening, don't listen to me. The voice that you're hearing right now, don't listen to this voice. Regular season, listen to this voice because you would have done pretty well. Bills Mafia.
I want it to happen. I do. Just don't think it will.
Bills Mafia. Let's rise. Let's go to KC. Break some tables. Let's break some hearts too. You know what I mean? Let's stop that three-peat right in its tracks. Let's, get it going, right? Get it going. It's freaking Mahomes.
History is on the Bills
Mahomes.
side.
It's on the Bills. Well,
no, it is.
don't say that. Don't say that.
No one's ever three-peated.
Yeah, but the Bills can't win a Super Bowl to save their life, so be careful.
That's actually really true.
Be really careful. Last time the Bills were in the Super Bowl, I think we both know who that coach was, or both know who that player was.
They lost it 4 times straight. 3 of them to the Cowboys.
Mr. McKilly. Mr. McKilly.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Take back what I said.
Yeah. Yeah. that Bills fans are like, oh, how dare you?
At least they make no, but they have historically can make Super Bowls.
Well, yeah, maybe. It's we're not helping the Bills cause here. I'm trying to talk myself into it as I'm going, and I can't do it. Like I'm really trying to talk myself into it. No,
history is on their side, just not at the end. Right now, though, it is.
Yeah, King of the North, all that shit. There's just the big thing with the Chiefs, right? You think you understand the game plan, right? These great dynasties, you think you understand what's going to happen. Shit, Tom Brady. You think you know what's going to happen. And then all of a sudden, Mahomes doesn't even throw for, over 300 yards. And Isaiah Pacheco goes out and has himself a day. Tom Brady doesn't even throw for 300 yards. James White goes out and has himself a day. Mm-hmm. Right? Like, Mahomes doesn't have to go out and have a day to beat this other side. Wait. Or does he? Right? Does he? Because the Bills are the only team. We're not even Denver. Just hit us in the comments, whatever. You're nowhere near them. You're better than us because the Cowboys suck, but you're nowhere near. With Buffalo beating KC, how dominant they looked when they did it. You knew it was going to happen, right? Like when that regular season game came, you're like, it's undefeated. Here it goes. They're going to take them. Buffalo Bills beat Kansas City twice in one season to stop the three-peat and make it to their first Super Bowl since quarterback Jim Kelly. Or Mahomes is back again for number 3. A lot less ands or ors in that second one. So I'm with you. I would like the Bills to win. I would like to see Josh Allen in the show, in the main show, with the Super Bowl, but I can't pick against Mahomes in the playoffs until he loses. Mm-hmm. Like, he did lose to Brady. Like I said, he did lose to Joe Burrow. I don't know if that Cincinnati team is going to be back with the contracts that they have. I don't know if that team ever goes on a run like they went on.
Yeah, Joe will be back. They'll be there.
Joe Burrow will be there, but I'm not sure. I mean,
he's that whole team.
him and Jamar and Hendrickson.
Yes. Yeah. On defense, yeah. Still though, I mean, that's
about it.
Yeah, but he's the reason they made that Super Bowl. So
100%. Not taking anything away from Joe Burrow, and he took down Patrick Mahomes in the freaking playoffs. Not to mention that. Yeah, not to mention that. But he's not here this year. Nope. Lamar's not here this year. And like you said, it's Buffalo, and it's a guy that's never been to a Super Bowl before. This is the biggest game. Are the lights going to be too bright? No, it's Josh Allen. He's used to going to Kansas City. He's already done it before. But this is a tough game, and it's hard to pick against Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs, and I don't think I can. And just like what has happened in the previous playoffs, this more than ever, whoever has the ball last wins this game. And look at every matchup that they've had. Mahomes has had the ball last, even with like less than 30 seconds. I think it was 18 seconds or something like that. 13. That's right. 13 seconds.
They tied it and went to overtime. Josh didn't touch the ball.
Yeah. I can't go again.
They should have won that. If they were going to win any of them, including this matchup that we're about to have this weekend, should have won that one. That one is the one you should have won.
And Mahomes came out there and said no. So we got a good weekend of football. We got the last weekend of football until the Super Bowl. But done with the conference championship. Now we are hitting the NFL coaching talk, and we may or may not have waited to drop this episode today because there was a lot of coaching news. Thank God we did. There was a lot of coaching news. The Bears hired Ben Johnson, so let's just get into that first. You alluded to it earlier. Take it away. You said that it's looking up for Caleb Williams right now. Ben Johnson is the former Detroit Lions offensive coordinator.
I said that in this coaching vacancy for the Bears, I wanted them to kind of go and hire an offensive guy who can kind of help Caleb develop. Right? We want him to. We know he has raw talent. We know he has skills. It's just they're not always consistently shown on the big screen, right, on the television. So I want a guy who can go in there and kind of refine him a little bit. I want a guy who can kind of go and make something out of what his talents are. And I think a perfect guy for that is Ben Johnson, man, because look what he did for Jared Goff in Detroit. Jared Goff transformed his game whenever he went to Detroit. Obviously, different system than when he was in the LA Rams, but in a similar type of play style. But see how confident he is now. He won a game this season with 5 interceptions, and he kept going. He was like, "Oh, I got 4. I'm just gonna rip it again." It's the type of confidence that you have in your system to be able to make those throws. You're like, okay, I know this guy's going to be open. I've seen it 1,000 times. I'm going to make this throw. And if it doesn't work out, he has the confidence to turn around and do it again and again and again. And that's because he believes in his offensive coordinator. He believes in the system. So I think Ben Johnson is going to bring a whole lot of that to the Bears. And this is probably the best hire the Bears have, like, in recent memory at least, gotten. This is
For sure.
the top coaching candidate, I think, by far in a lot of people's minds. You could put, I think Vrabel up there was a big one as well. Ben Johnson, and I think the DC for Detroit, who also got signed, was pretty up there for me. But other than that, there's not a whole lot of, other big name guys that are out there. So Johnson's the name that's been floating around a lot, and I think he's going to get Caleb at least better. I'm not going to say he's going to make him right, because it does fall on the shoulders of Caleb Williams. But I think he's going to make him better. And you saw him gradually, improve throughout his rookie season. And there were some moments when it was like, oh yeah, whatever. But these guys know how to get players open. They know how to do well. So it's going to be interesting to see if Ben Johnson can repeat that same type of success, or if it's going to be, a song and dance we've seen with the Bears many, many times. You look at the Minnesota Vikings, and they went out and got Kevin O'Connell, who was at the time a very fantastic play caller for the Super Bowl winning Rams. And that was that OC. That was like the cream of the crop at the time. The next play caller. You want your next play caller, offensive mind, to get offensive linemen touchdowns. So that's kind of, I think, a very similar type of hire, in my opinion, and also in the NFC North. So Minnesota's doing just fine. Obviously, they did not win in the playoffs, but that offense was ripping, or it seemed to be mostly ripping throughout the season with Sam Darnold. So just a little bit of comparison, just offense for the Bears. I think their defense is all right. Took a step back after that Washington loss, the Hail Mary, but I think that's just a lack of motivation, lack of confidence from the defense. I think they'll get going. And I think Ben Johnson's got a couple good guys in that staff, if I were to say, that he's put together. So love the hire, man. I think Caleb's going to get better. To what degree, I don't know. But I want a minimum of 3 years. Minimum 3 years here in Chicago. See what he can do. If he's starting to fail, and if it's if it's the Chicago Bears woes that we know and love, maybe not love, know and have come to expect over the past recent seasons, by year 4, you can get rid of them. You know what I mean? That's kind of what they did with this recent head coaching hire, and a lot of very similar ones in the past. If you go back and look at their history, so it's they haven't had a lot of good luck with coaches recently, but I think this one will be all right. I think I can put my hat on and say that it'll be all right. If 4 years comes down and Ben Johnson is gone 2 years ago, I don't know, but I would like to see him for 3 years. That's my opinion. The minimum amount you should hire a head coach for, and see what he can do, because he can't turn a program around in 1. Probably not, unless you're the Washington Commanders. 2, that's like Dan Campbell, Detroit Lions type season. You know what I mean? 3, you should be turned around by that time if you're a head coach, or at least better than you were. So if it's not looking on the up and up, I think by that time you can say goodbye. But I like it, man. I wish Dallas would have got him, but that's a very, very high profile head coach, and the fact that he's going to Chicago of all places is very, very good for that city, because they need a head coach in there. They need someone that's just going to get them right, and I think he will. So what do you think about the hire? I've gone on lengths about how good it is. I don't know your opinion is different or not.
I mean, I think that I would have to agree with you that he was the top candidate out there aside from, Vrabel. You hear the stirrings of Bill Belichick and all that kind of stuff. I don't know how true any of that really was. But, Ben Johnson was, if you look at Detroit and you look at what he's done in his tenure there, it's like, okay, it's hard to argue that. It's really hard to argue. And he's going to Chicago where you can argue he has an upgraded receiving core, definitely not a running back core, but what Detroit or what Chicago is going to be doing in the draft for sure. But
big old lineman.
It's a coordinator that's his first time as a head coach. Like it's almost the same as drafting a kid out of college. You just don't know what's going to happen. Like you really don't know what's going to happen when they step on the NFL field. It could completely change. But I don't think that it's going to completely change, and it can't get much worse with Chicago. I mean, just the lack of play calling, just the horrible plays that I've witnessed over and over just watching that is the couch warrior that I am. So hell of a job by Chicago, and that was easily the best candidate left. The next best candidate, or one of the next best candidates left, the Jets hired was Aaron Glenn, which was the defensive coordinator for the Lions. So the Bears and the Jets, both of those teams have been like, oh, who knows when they're going to get a head coach? They may be the last ones because who wants to go there? Well, they've got arguably the top two coordinators, one at the offensive position, one at the defensive position, and they lost, and they still got signed that quickly. So that shows you how much of a hot commodity they could potentially be. I think that Ben Johnson has more of an upside, in my opinion, but again, the Jets, I think, are at a way, way different spot than the Bears are at. I think that when you look at the Jets roster, it could be a bit of a dumpster fire there, but when you look at the Bears, realistically, if Caleb has a pretty decent season next year, that's a playoff team. That division, it sucks because how good their division is, but that could be a playoff team next year, and with Ben Johnson, I think they could be. With Aaron Glenn and the Jets, I mean, how much better are the Jets going to get? What's happening at quarterback? Are the Jets a team that Aaron comes back? Does Aaron retire? Does Aaron go somewhere else? Are the Jets a team that could potentially go in on Sam Darnold if they don't bring him back? Could the Jets get a Cooper Rush? Could the Jets want to?
The Jets and Sam Darnold would be so funny.
Be hilarious. I know it's kind of was the joke. I don't think they'll actually do that, but that's pretty funny.
They need a quarterback.
They do, and who knows what they're going to do in the draft? But I'm going to be completely honest here, man. Like, I think they had a better coach with Saleh. Like, I think he's a better defensive coordinator as well than Aaron, or defensive-minded coach Aaron Glenn. But we haven't seen that. First-time head coach, so I could be wrong there. But that's the next segue. Dallas Cowboys interviewed Kellen Moore, Leslie Frazier, Robert Saleh, and Brian. How do you say that dude's last name?
Schottenheimer.
Schottenheimer. Thank you. I was like, I don't want to mess. I don't want to mess this up.
It's either Schottenheimer or Schottenheimer. I don't know how the H works in his name. It's one of the two, though.
Well, good. You tuned into this pod for mispronounced names and weather talk. Here we are.
Actually, no, we did talk about the weather.
We did. That's what I'm saying. That's why you tuned into the pod.
It's been a couple weeks since we did it, though.
This one hurts me, man. Like,
oh, I know.
Just what the what the fuck? What? Oh, Dallas. Okay, let's just jump into this. All right. Kellen Moore. I have a feeling that's going to be the guy. I have a feeling it's going to be Kellen Moore, or it's going to be Brian Schottenheimer, whatever the fuck his name is. Both of them no go for me. Both of them no go on my books. Kellen Moore, he gave the ball to Saquon. That's it. Nothing else. That's it. Okay, we're done there. That's the whole argument. And then go look at what he did in the Chargers. Didn't think so.
I forgot he was
the offensive coordinator, Brian Schottenheimer. That's what has the offense done? Tanner, what is the Dallas Cowboys offense done? Maybe not even this season, because you can argue that Dak was hurt the whole time. Okay, that's fine. What about maybe when Dak was healthy? Okay, that's what I thought.
He had an all right year, not like insane. They won a division last year, although they shouldn't have. Let's be honest.
It's the Dallas Cowboys. You last year you had your pick of the litter with Bill Belichick, Vrabel, Saleh. You had your pick, and now we're going Kellen Moore, Leslie Frazier. I think Leslie Frazier is the DC from the Seattle Seahawks, if I'm not mistaken. Robert Saleh, which I think that's the best candidate out of these guys, but
yeah, even then,
but even then, like that's, I mean, is Mike? I mean, would you argue Mike McCarthy better than Kellen Moore? To me, yeah. Better than the offensive coordinator? Yeah, you know what I mean. I'd say so. But again, hey, new offensive coordinator, he could be head coach. It could work. Kellen Moore, Dallas said, hey, you were a quarterback a year ago. Come and call plays for us. Come on, man. A couple years later, he comes back and he could be the head coach. Who knows? Look, Jerry said it's his personal mission, and his personal mission this offseason was to sign a bunch of players, and he signed 2 whole people. So, unfortunately, the dark days, I think, may be getting close to upon us in Dallas, especially with the 2 teams being in the NFC the NFC Conference Championship game being the Washington Commanders and the Eagles. Boys, if you're in the NFC, thank God we're not New York, but
yeah, at least we're not the Giants.
Yeah, we're paddling we're paddling uphill. Yeah, paddling uphill with just a hole in the boat. It's not upstream, not uphill because there's no water in the hills. Nice job, Chad. Look, those are the ones that Dallas has come out and said we have interviewed them, and I don't see Dallas making a hire that's not one of these guys. Without formally interviewing them, I would be shocked if that happens. So to me, it's one of these 4 guys. Deion Sanders did not, to my knowledge, I did not see Deion Sanders actually do the interview. So I don't think it's going to be Deion. I didn't really get believed in that hype when it came out. Would have been a culture change, but Kellen Moore doesn't give you really anything that McCarthy didn't give you, except now Kellen's going to be the one calling the plays aside from McCarthy, and Kellen's going to be the one managing the game aside from McCarthy. Can it get much worse? No, but hey, that's kind of the glass half full approach. Leslie Frazier, the defensive coordinator for Seattle, maybe he's some people's guy. I can't say I'm too familiar with specifically the Seattle Seahawks defense this year. I don't think that they were the tippy top of the league, but hey, who knows? And then Robert Saleh, defensive guy, got fired out of New York, right? Got fired out of New York in the middle of the season. For some reason, for absolutely no reason. I think that would be a solid coach, but then you're building off of defense and you are really, really entrusting your coordinators, and you have to get an offensive coordinator that's going to go. And then the offensive coordinator with Brian Schottenheimer. I mean, to me, I think that's the lowest fruit, in my opinion, out of all of these candidates, aside from maybe Leslie Frazier. But if I'm ranking them, man, like Robert Saleh, I'm going to give the nudge above Kellen Moore. I'm going to put Kellen Moore at 2. Then I'll put Brian Schottenheimer at 3, and then Leslie Frazier at 4. That's kind of where I'm looking at. What do you think? I've been long-winded with this one. Take us through your head.
I just why Kellen Moore? Why? Is it because he has the Dallas connections? Sure. Is it because that he is kind of on a team that's probably going to go to the Super Bowl? Sure. Is it because he's the next up-and-coming offensive coordinator who shows every single game that he is a cut above the rest? No. I don't think anyone, especially if you talk to Dallas fans, will tell you that narrative. Go look at Robert Saleh. What did he do in, New York? I thought that he created a very, very good defense that clearly took a step back whenever he left. Clearly, with some of the best defensive players, was worse when he left. Is that because of Aaron Rodgers? No, I think it's because you took away a defensive-minded head coach and left him with whoever the hell was left, and you fired like half the staff. I think that's why the Jets stunk. Not because of Saleh, because they don't know what the heck they're doing at like random points in the season. I don't even know if Woody Johnson was even watching the New York Jets at points this year, because of how bad they were. Regardless of if he was able to or if he just didn't want to, because he was overseas as an ambassador. Now, who was the other guy? Schottenheimer? No.
Yeah.
Why would we hire a guy who has been, and this is for Kellen Moore too. You can throw this on his resume as well. Continuously gotten outcoached in the playoffs. Continuously. We obviously, offensive coordinator for Dallas. Why would we promote him up to head coach given the resume that he doesn't have?
Thank you.
So a lot of it comes down to, I think Dallas was just not prepared somehow for this coaching hire. And I don't know how you couldn't be, because why is it not Ben Johnson? This is the Dallas Cowboys. Why are you not going for the best possible head coach? I get it. He has other prerogatives. He wants to go to he wants to go to Chicago, all that, but not even an interview. Not even an interview with the DC for Detroit. Nobody. And I think it's a lot of those interviews happened the day or the day before McCarthy got fired, if I'm not mistaken, too. So
mutually parted ways.
Obviously, his contract was up to that day, and they did not reach an extension. But if you make the decision a week or two before, like a lot of these other teams do, not saying in the season, because it would have been in the season at that time, but last game, after the last game, make the decision, man, and get some new guys in there. If you're not going to bring McCarthy back, why is he still here a week later? Why are you not interviewing head coaching candidates because you're trying to make something work with McCarthy? Obviously, hindsight is, a factor in this argument. But if you didn't think you were going to be able to sign him, why did you keep him around? And why did you let yourself fall behind in the head coaching search, which I thought had multiple guys that were really good? So I would say 3 guys that I would like, that are gone now because you waited too long. Anyways, that's that situation. You can put it under the bus. You know what I mean? You can kind of throw it behind us at this point. Now you're Dallas, and you're looking at these 3 guys for your next head coach of one of the biggest franchise in the world, sports franchise, that is. And there's just no interest. There's no, nobody wants to come here. Nobody wants to be the head coach for Dallas, the way that they operate things. And I don't think it's going to get better anytime soon. But the guys that you have right now are surprisingly not that bad, I guess. But with Kellen Moore, we've seen that. We've done that. We know that the offense will improve if he comes. We know that. I think the offense will get better. Like you said, it can't get a whole lot worse from last season. Now, how is it going to compare to the year before, like when you said when he was in LA, and that was his first season gone, I believe? Okay, Dallas won the division, and they looked pretty all right in moments. Dak had a good year. How much of that was because of, Mike McCarthy starting to call plays? I don't know, but they go out and they get destroyed in the playoffs. That was yeah. And that was that Green Bay loss that everyone's like, what the heck happened? They got out coached, and Green Bay got out coached, in their playoff victory and playoff loss. So it just doesn't, the cards just don't look very good. You know what I mean? You look at like all the things that these guys have done. I'd say Saleh is probably still the best candidate. I would like Saleh. I'd like the defense to get back to where it was. I think that's a key component in rebuilding your franchises. And Dallas is starting to get a little bit closer to a rebuild. They're closer to a rebuild than being there, let's be honest. So whatever stuff you have to build left, I would love it to be a defensive kind of push. That's when we saw Dallas at their best, when Dan Quinn was at the helms of the defense and they were getting turnovers and they were making plays. Trayvon Diggs was doing his thing. He was in the media. Dak didn't have to do everything. He didn't have to go out there and win you games because the defense would just do it for you, and they would put you in positions on these really good games, So they had Kellen Moore, which is like, okay, what did he do in the playoffs? Okay, they lost to the Niners. Okay, they lost to the Niners again. You know, I think I just don't see the appeal behind any of these guys. Really, I
Yeah.
think it comes down to more, and I think it comes down to Saleh, and that's just kind of where it sits for me. If either of those two guys get hired, I would rather Saleh, given what he did with the Jets. But and I like him. Think he's a character kind of guy. I don't think he's going to take up for any BS here at you know Cowboys Cowboys facility. But that makes me fear that Jerry's going to go with Kellen because I know how he likes to do things. I know he likes to keep things in house. I know he likes to hire his guys. I know because Jerry was the one, not the person specifically, but he gave him that opportunity to become the quarterback's coach. He gave him that opportunity to become the OC. And he's kind of putting Kellen Moore on like this pedestal, being like, hey, this is, the guy that I kind of, made to be the next offensive guru. And I think he'll be back in Dallas. I think it's like 90%. I think it's got to be. It has to be Kellen, right? And then what is he going to bring with him? A whole lot of nothing. You know what I mean? So I don't know what kind of staff he's going to put together. I don't know what kind of plays he's going to do and put together. But Philly, the reason Philly has sucked this year in the times that they have is because of their offense. No one's ever been like, okay, yeah, Philly's defense stinks. No, they really don't say that a whole lot with Cooper DeJean, Quinyon Mitchell, all those guys. It's the offense. They just can't get it going. They have all these pieces on offense, and they still can't find a groove, a rhythm. Whose fault is that, man? Like, let's just put it on the OC. I get it. It's a very simple solution for a complex problem, but it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. You know what I mean? And I think it comes from a lack of planning from the offices, the head office's point of view. So that's my like 10 cents on it, but it's just you're picking from a bunch of guys that you shouldn't be picking from, in my opinion. This should be Ben Johnson's job. This should be Aaron Glenn's job. This should be Vrabel's job because this is the Dallas Cowboys. Who would not want to be the head coach? I mean, I get it. You got to work with Jerry, but this is the biggest pedestal in sports. Why is it not desirable? You know what I mean? And I think it's just from a lack of game planning. But anyways, that's my rant. And Kellen Moore is going to be the next head coach of the Dallas Cowboys.
You still got Raiders, Jags, and Saints that have the openings as well. So you'll definitely see Kellen or Saleh get signed somewhere else, I think. And then, we mentioned it. Detroit's both of their coordinators are now gone. So old Dan Campbell's got to bring in some new coordinators there in Detroit. And it's going to be interesting to kind of see what step that team takes next year without these guys at the helms that they've had pretty much the entire time they've been there. That's it on the NFL talk. National championship time. A couple days ago, that game, the first half of that game, Ohio State, it was just like, uh-oh. You know what I mean? Uh-oh. And then Notre Dame, give them credit. They did fight their way back. But we were talking before we got on, and you nailed it. It never seemed like it was that close, even though at one point it was a 7-point game.
Mm-hmm.
Like it toward the end of the game. I mean, it didn't seem that close. If
7 or 8, something
just
like one possession, regardless.
Yeah, and just if Ohio, I don't know what really happened with Ohio State in the second half. They just kind of stopped offensive production altogether.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not like Notre Dame had that great a production. Like, it's not like they weren't moving up and down the field. Like, it was just a lot of punting. And then Notre Dame got lucky on a couple drives and a couple key penalties there as well that just randomly out of nowhere. And then the quarterback just lowering his head on Notre Dame and just absolutely going for it. But Ohio State was clearly the better team. Like, clearly the better team. I'm not going to say it was a boring national championship, but might have been not the most entertaining that I can say. But Ohio State showed up. Their playmakers showed up. The guys that that are going to be declaring for the draft showed up. So it's going to be a fun time to talk about these Ohio State Buckeyes as future NFL players this offseason, because now it's the offseason for college football, and we get to really go into all these college athletes and everything. But take us through your national championship, and then after that, I got a fun prospect profile for everybody.
It was a national championship. I don't think a whole lot of people will remember, 10, 20 years from now, given how, we'll say it's the first 12-team playoff. I think Ohio State made their mark on it. But, man, it's like you said, it was a different team in the first half than the second half, but the first half was enough to propel them to that second half, you know. So I think a big part is, I'll hit on it too. That play calling in the second half was definitely more conservative. You could easily tell. I think there was a whole lot more quarterback power, QB blast than I really would have liked in that second half. It was like, yeah, it worked in the first half and it worked well. And even in points, it worked in the second half, but it just got to a point where it was like, we have our running back has 3 touchdowns. Did you know that? Are you sure? You know, so I would have liked to see Judkins or even Henderson, who had a great game too, get the ball a little bit more in the second half, just kind of downhill running a little bit. I get it. Will Howard's, he's got wheels. He's a big guy. He can make some physical pushes, but like, man, I just wanted to see a little bit more aggressive of a play calling. I think get your guys, you know, the ball in space, some quick throws, nothing like too crazy where you can take a sack on the play, but just quick throws, getting your offense going, keep the clock moving. But it became one-dimensional to a point where it was like, okay, they're clearly trying to waste this clock, and I get it. You know, they're up big in the national championship. They want this game to end, but that let, you know, Riley Leonard and the Notre Dame Fighting Irish come back in, and on that point too, I thought Riley Leonard played really, really well, given a really good Ohio State defense. And in that second half, I thought that he started to really come on, obviously, as you watched, but he surprised me, I think, in a lot of ways, just in his accuracy, his ability to throw the ball downfield. I didn't really see that a whole lot. You saw it in spurts and glimpses this season, but he's delivering balls in guys' bread boxes. Like that touchdown that put them within 1 score was fantastic from Riley Leonard. He looked really, really good. And on the previous drive, he looked really good. So I think he has a little bit more in the tank than I thought he originally did. And he could have won that game. But I will say the poise and the absolute nuts, we'll put it like that, since he is a Buckeye, on Will Howard is that's championship pedigree right there. He has balls of steel. I don't know how you go into a national championship, and I texted you, it was like, how, I think they said it was like a record or something like that, like 12 to 13 straight completions to start a national championship. And it was something like 20 or something like that since his previous miss in the previous game against Texas. And I was like, he's what happened? You know, like I thought he'd been playing well all year. Don't get me wrong. He had that loss to Oregon, and I don't think it was his fault. You know, he slid, whatever. But he played really well in that game and did the exact same thing throughout the playoffs. So that Michigan loss was probably, you know, the spark that let them go on this national championship run. If they beat Michigan, if they beat them handedly, I don't know if we see this same Ohio State team, especially against like Oregon. You know what I mean? So this was a big challenge, and it might have been their most difficult game of the playoffs. Notre Dame really played really well in that second half. So give it a lot of credit to Notre Dame for being able to do what they did against that Ohio State roster, but give a whole lot more credit to the play calling at the end of the game, because just, again, the absolute nuts to go out there on like 3rd and 10 or whatever it is and just throw probably the longest pass of that game to your best receiver, Jeremiah Smith, one-on-one on the outside to pretty much seal the game. You know what I mean? You haven't been getting a whole lot of production in the offensive half or in the second half, and that play was just the cherry on top. If that, you know, if OSU, if they don't convert on that drive, Notre Dame probably goes down there and ties it, just the way that Notre Dame's offense was playing. So I think that was a huge decision, and probably like the best play call of the second half, just because of the impact that it had on the game. So, you know, national championship, they played fantastic. Will Howard played awesome. That roster is stupid, and I was very, very impressed by both quarterbacks. I thought that, you know, Riley Leonard, like I said, played a hell of a game. Will Howard, I think he missed 2 throws. One was that at the end of the first half, that kind of fade away to the back of the end zone that I thought could have been caught, and then there was that 3rd down on that little out route. I don't remember who it was to, but that was in the second half, and he missed that one. And those were the only 2 throws, in my opinion, he missed all night. Other ones were, you know, plays by other guys that you can kind of chalk it up a little bit. So he played probably, I mean, you're the NFL guy here with the scouts and things of that nature. How do you think, you know, Will Howard's performance put him in terms in just this entire postseason, just in general? You know, what are NFL teams going to be thinking about this guy? Like, moving forward in the NFL draft. Obviously, you don't have to give like a whole synopsis, but like definitely improved it, I would imagine, winning the Natty.
Yeah, I mean, is he a junior or senior?
He's a senior.
Well, that's the big one right there. I mean, he's never ever been talked about as, someone that's been at the top of the class. Someone that, hey, yeah, he did win a national championship. That's a pedigree under his belt. He has college experience. He doesn't have a ton. He definitely doesn't have quantity. He definitely more has quality over quantity. And in my opinion, he is a senior, I understand, but in terms of like where and everything, but he's a tough one for me, because I'm not saying early rounds by any stretch of the means, because unfortunately he probably has 3 first-round wide receivers, and he's also has arguably 2 second-round, and you could throw in a first-round running back in there as well, not to mention all of his offensive linemen that I haven't even hit on yet. So, there's a lot of pieces around him. Is he the next, CJ Stroud? No, not in my opinion. Could he potentially be, a Justin Fields? Well, they don't really play the same, right? But I'd kind of put the ceiling more there. I know Justin was taken high. I understand where CJ was taken, but I don't see, Will Howard going in the first round, in the second round. Probably not in the third round. I could see him going really in that like 4 to 7 range, but at the same time, all it takes is one NFL GM to say, "Did you see that national championship game? Give me Will Howard. He's still sitting there." You know what I mean? And that's all it takes. And you've seen different guys.
How does it compare to JJ McCarthy, who was, quarterback for that Michigan team last year, who went on and won that national championship? I don't think that he was as highly valued as he was going into those playoffs, as opposed to, afterwards.
I mean, with JJ McCarthy, I'm pulling up my notes right now because
I would think that McCarthy would definitely have an improved draft stock grade from a lot of those guys, just given the heater that he went on in those last 2 games of the CFP last year. So it's kind of interesting if with the Ohio State Buckeyes and Will Howard, the way that he played just in the regular season, and then kind of seemingly turning it to another level in the playoffs against 4 really, really good teams. And in my opinion, they had the hardest road there too. So kind of interesting.
Yeah, got my notes. So right now he is my 5th rated quarterback, and he could.
That's around
right now. Yeah, I have him right now that he could sneak into the 3rd round. So right now I have Will Howard going into the 3rd round potentially. How much do you value his national championship? How much do you value the performance in the first half? How much do you value, his ability to get those yards when he needs it, right? The throws, he made some crazy good throws, but he also makes some pretty questionable throws at times too. I also think definitely, and I also think that you've seen a couple times where he's not thrown his receivers open. His receivers have almost kind of thrown him open. You know what I mean? But you can't take anything away from a national champion. You can't take anything away from a guy that went and did it and has done it practically the whole season. And again, his pedigree stands on its own. But I could see him kind of jumping in the 3rd maybe, but I don't know if he's a top 100 player. You know what I mean? Like he's probably in that, like, again, I haven't done all of the research. I think I've only looked at like 60, 70 guys right now, but he's not there for me anywhere close. So for me, probably ranks in the, off the cuff, probably between, again, I got to do more research, 80 to 100 on my side. And 80 to 100, 60, 66, 64. That's the end of the second round. So you jump into the 3rd round right there. So that's where I think he could be, in that 80 to 100 range. And that's the 100 is when you go into the 4th round. So 3rd, 4th round kind of guy for me. His arm's fun.
It is.
His arm's fun.
It is.
I think that he's going to be a quarterback that's going to really need to test well. Because I think that right now, when you're a first round quarterback, if you don't test well, it could go really bad. But if you're a third, fourth round guy and you don't test well, then it could drop you down a little bit much. And not to mention, again, who you have that you're going to be throwing to just at the pro day, right? Like all of that stuff. But it's a good question, and I think that this is a guy that you're going to see that goes on, not day 2, probably, maybe day 2, but for sure day 3, end of day 2. And hey, when he gets drafted, you're like, hey, I know that guy. He won the national championship. But I mean, I'm going to hit on it right before I jump into this prospect profile. I mean, just the quarterbacks in this year's class, like it's just not, it's not the same as kind of what we're used to seeing. And me specifically, with the quarterbacks, like they're not in my top 20 right now, and again, I gotta, I'll release all of that stuff as the time gets closer to the NFL draft. Not this episode that's coming up next, but the following one will be our first mock draft, by the way. So that's going to be really fun when we're kind of in that lull of the Super Bowl. But good question. Keep them churning. Prospect profile time. I'm going to do my best to get this guy's name right. Tedoroa? I think I said it right. I think I said it wrong. Tedoroa.
Didn't they say?
I think that's it.
I don't remember. We literally looked up his name before that.
We looked it up. And it's hard. I think it's Tedoroa. Tedoroa McMillan, 6'5", 212 pounds, wide receiver out of Arizona. He's a junior. Draft grade for me is between an early and a mid grade. Draft projection is going to be an early to a mid. We were talking about this. You told me to look up this guy a year ago, which is kind of funny. And you said, take a look at this guy. And I did. And a year ago, he was pretty good. And then a year later, he's probably going to be one of the top wide receivers taken in this class. So that's why you listen to this show. We're college guys. We know the prospects. But not a ton of separation on routes. But it seemingly doesn't matter. You know what I mean? He's not a guy that's going to burn you. More of like a AJ Green, DeAndre Hopkins, Des Bryant, not a ton of separate. Do what?
Contested catch, not a ton of separation on routes.
Reminds me a lot of Keenan Allen, actually. That's my player comparison. Like when he runs, they look the same. Legitimately, they look the same when they run. I looked it back and forth. I'm like, okay, their strides like almost the exact same. The game that I liked most that I watched his was against New Mexico. Pretty much opened the entire game. Contested catch with this guy, like you just said, absolutely no problem. And his run after catch ability is impressive for a bigger wide receiver. And the awareness to slow up on the line is absolutely top notch. And what I say by that is it almost seems like whenever he's starting his route, he slows it up as opposed to receivers kind of speed it up and they're out of that route real quick. It almost looks like he's in a flow state, and then whenever you realize he's in a flow state, he's behind you. It's a weird kind of thing that he does at the beginning of his routes, but it's fun to watch, and it's also something that I kind of picked up on. So I'm interested to see kind of how it is in the NFL. But this is a great prospect, and another wide receiver class. They're just churning them out, dude. Just absolutely churning out wide receivers. And hey, this year we're gonna get some more first round wide receivers that I think will live up to the name. But that is all I got on the prospect profile this week. Any other sports, Tanner? Or are we getting out of here?
Spurs are playing in Paris tomorrow. That's pretty cool.
If you're watching on YouTube, that's Tony Parker. That's game used jersey. Manu Ginobili game used. Tim Duncan game used. And then Slam rookie edition.
They're unfortunately all off screen. Unless you want to.
So I just pointed to nothing there on YouTube.
You pointed to the right half of your cards, which are I can only see the first column of the right half.
We're gonna need to change that.
Well, that's up to you. I mean, I can't. We could make I don't know how we would make these bigger. It would be fun. I'd like to.
All right. Well,
we got some fun stuff.
Spurs in Paris, huh? Well,
Spurs in Paris. It's at like noon. I think it's at 1:00 for me, so I'm going to be watching it just while I'm working. If you have access to a television and can watch the NBA, I would put it on. because Wemby is a freak and he's gonna go ham in Paris. We already know they're playing the Pacers. Pacers are a good team, but I think Spurs can get them if they're in Paris. It's kind of like a second home for the Spurs now, which is really cool. Very very big international franchise. The Spurs are. They pluck their players from pretty much everywhere. So
They
the fact that they have
already
a home,
were too.
yeah, no, it obviously works. We know that by now. So it's cool to see them have a home over there in Paris, which I would imagine, so they're going to be going ham. Wemby's going to be going ham. Go watch the Spurs. And I think we got some good basketball on tonight as well. So that's it from me.
We'll see you next week, folks.
Goodbye.